Hi everyone, and welcome back for another album review. Today I'm headed north of the USA border to Canada to check out Lee Aaron's new album, Radio On. And if you don't know Lee Aaron, she is the Canadian metal queen herself. She's been kicking around since the 80s doing some really cool music. She started out super metal and has morphed over the years into a rock feel, blues feel, indie feel, all still relevant rock, but you never know what to expect when you get a new Lee Aaron album. And I can say that honestly because, her first few albums were totally metal, morphed into that 80s rock and roll sound, jumped into the 90s and went a little different because of maybe the grunge scene being here all of a sudden, and it kind of killed a lot of rock and roll artists' careers at that point and kind of stalled. So she shifted her sound and had a little bit different vocals, and then she came into, a break and came back in the early 2000s with an album I always thought was really kind of strange, Beautiful Things. It just seemed like a very different, just completely out there sort of indie album that just never really, to me, fit her whole catalog that she's done. It's always been the one album that I've always just kind of gone, I don't really understand this album that much or why it was done, and the exploration or what the difference that caused this album to come out. So there's that one album in there that I feel doesn't necessarily fit her discography that well, but then she jumps back in with Fire and Gasoline. She has Diamond Baby Blues, her later 2000s 10s albums, and then her live album that came out last year. You can never deny that she's a great performer, she's a great artist, she's a great writer. She's always doing something different. So when you sit down to listen to the new album, go into it with zero expectations because it's gonna be taking you on different drives throughout, and there's a lot going on in this one. I would say out of all of her albums, to me this one feels like the most cohesive when it comes to melodic feel and just the melodic-y blues rock, and it really comes together nice. There are still, of course, like all of her albums have always had some sort of almost cheesy kind of lyric here and there that you're going to catch that you might kind of snicker at, that I've done. The 80s ones were the ones that had the most of those because we didn't know back in the 80s how cheesy we were. We do now. Oh boy, do we now. With the hair and everything else, but as I was listening through back, I had to go back and reference some of her old stuff just to see how she's, evolved with this new album. And it just made me laugh to go back and go, oh gosh, there's that cheesy lyric that, whoa, back in the days we didn't really think about it, and now it's like, ooh, cringe. But that's what the 80s were. But headed into, 2021, she's got this really great lineup going. She's working with Sean Kelly, Dave Raymer, and John Cody in her band. For itself, the music, I just got to tell you, it's like 12 tracks, and it kind of plays through like this feeling of the radio's dead, but radio shouldn't be dead, and there should be music out there for the radio. And these are tracks that you would think that should be on radio and you would want to hear on radio. There's great melodies, but then there's also this really cool tons of riffs, and she really stretches her voice in many different dimensions. So you're going to get some of that softer stuff that I said in Beautiful Things felt kind of strange, where her vocals are very different, but then you're also going to get that tone she's known for, that really nice deep tone she has to her voice that really has always made me think she's a great vocalist. Because where some artists were more pitchy back in the 80s, she had this great tone that she wasn't leaning into that pitch. She didn't have to. So I'm really glad that she put out this new album and the feel of the blues in it, because it really shows you the versatility in her style, where she's just letting loose and having a great time. And her vocals kind of match some of these bluesy riffs as well, that she gets a little bit blue tone to her voice that you don't necessarily get on her other albums. So I'm really digging what she did here, and she's got some really kicking tracks. She starts out with the Vampin' track, and it's a lot of fun. It just takes you through a ride of melodies. Soulbreaker has this nice punchy grit. It's kind of heavy. I was actually really happy to hear that one like right into the second track. But she goes on down through her whole track listing, and you can probably tell by just looking at the song titles themselves maybe where you can kind of expect to go with them. But I just have to say, there's so many good things going on. Big riffs, fun drum tempos. You're going to get that bend and push in the sound that makes you want to just enjoy and rock out to a good album. And one that you're going to think when you're listening to it is that you're going to want to hear this live. And when I say that, if you look back at her 2019 release, Power Soul Rock and Roll, I think it was Power Soul and Rock and Roll, it was live. And I say this because some of her tracks over the years on her albums have always felt a little, I don't know if it was, I don't want to say it's like undermixed or something, like it just felt like something just kind of missing to the sound. And I don't know if that's because she's such a great live performer and her live sound sounds so much different than the albums. Not like the song's totally different. It's just that it brings the deeper feel to the music, and it's got almost like the tuning has gone down just a little bit, so it gives like this nice meaty feel to her sound, and it made it sound so much bigger on her album that she put out last year. And there was some of those tracks that I just always kind of felt like I didn't really connect very well with, really came together nicely on the live album. So when I talk about live as well, because I know she's going to be out doing some touring, I know next year for a fact I'm going to be catching her out in Germany, and I'm excited because now I get to see these new tracks live, whatever she decides to do of them. And I'm hoping she does a few of them because I want to see what live does to the sound of these tracks, because I think they're so good already that I want to see if she elevates that somehow in the live, because she always manages to make them sound so much better live too. So I'm super excited about this one. I mean, if you want to talk, she's the ultimate metal queen from Canada. People have appreciated her work for years. She's also great cheesy 80s. We've got all the girls' anthem songs, and the guys back in the 80s who were drooling over Lee Aaron, and they still appreciate her today because she is just a fabulous artist. And I'm glad that the guys can appreciate more than just how they did in the 80s, where they kind of tend to push her back a little bit more, just being the pretty girl, pretty girl singer. And now she's got this grit to her sound that has survived all of these years. She stood her ground, and she stayed here, and she's still doing it today. And power to you, Lee Aaron, because it's kick-ass, and I love this new album. So I think you guys really need to check this one out. July 23rd, Metalville Records. It's available. It's going to be available in digital. It's going to be available, I believe, in physical medium. You got to check out the Metalville site. But man, you're going to want to get your hands on this one. She's already got some videos out now. The singles are out. She's got, I believe it's Vampin' is already out, and 21 is out. So you want to go catch those. You can get those videos on YouTube and see what she's doing. They're on Spotify as well. But damn, I think this is a really great album, and I'm glad to see that some of the artists that I grew up watching and loving and appreciating that also brought me into metal and rock and roll are still out there making really great music, and they're watching the evolution of their whole discography and their style. I couldn't be happier for an artist to do something like this and keep making great music that's relevant today, that still has music that's relevant from the 80s that pulls into today. So guys, you definitely want to check this one out. Again, Metalville Records. It's Lee Aaron, Radio On. It's a 12-track banger. You're going to love it. I loved it. There's so much going on, so much depth. Make sure you guys check this one out. We'll see you next time.